Morning, Dog Nation. I'm Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Kroger. Really excited about today's show for a couple of reasons. Reason number one, I think we've got an important topic today, and one of the things we've tried to work on is, how can we kind of find some unity? Now, honestly, sports talk is about arguing and debating, and I really don't have a problem with that. I have very high tolerance for that. But I do think today we have a chance to get some common ground on what I believe is a very important topic, certainly based on fan interest, maybe the most important topic, and some words from a former Georgia great are going to help us get there. So all of that's really good. Plus, before we're done, a chance to hear from both Kaylee Mansell and Jeff Sentell live. My portion today, pre-recorded. They'll be with you live. No doubt plenty has happened this week while I've been enjoying some spring break, and they are going to get you up to date on all of that. And then on Monday, I'm back at it, and we're kind of rolling through kind of a fun response to G-Day, looking at all that. So obviously they'll do their part to get you ready for G-Day. We're going to have a great time. Looking forward to seeing you in Athens if you're going to be there. And I know Kaylee and Jeff, as they talk about all the other topics, will get you ready for that. This is going to be a good show. It's going to be a great way to close out the week. I'll see you at the UGA bookstore prior to the game, I should say after the game. Kaylee will have your pregame coverage from the UGA bookstore before the game. Gonna be an awesome, awesome week, awesome weekend. So we'll see you there for that. And without further ado, let's get today's show rolling. It is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Kroger. And it begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
All right, coming up, I'm going to give way live to both Kaylee Mansell and Jeff Sentell here on our show. And no doubt they'll be doing plenty to get you ready for G-Day tomorrow in Athens. Obviously, I am pre-recorded kind of the final day of my spring break here right now. Many of you kind of enjoying some spring break this week too. But just know that tomorrow's a work day for me. Back home, back at it. See you in Athens after the game, UGA bookstore for our DawgNation postgame show. This is maybe, at the risk of hyperbole, maybe the most important postgame show we've ever done, because for the first time, almost everybody watching it, except for those leaving the stadium, almost everyone watching the postgame show will have not seen the game we are postgaming about. So this, many are calling the most important postgame show ever, because it'll be a chance for us to tell you what we saw, because many of you will not have seen it. So that'll be an interesting vibe. We'll figure all that out. That should be a lot of fun. But prior to the G-Day talk and stuff like that, I want to finish off what we have been doing a lot this week, kind of my over-unders for the upcoming year. And every now and then, something just kind of falls into place. And I really feel like this topic today, for me, if you want to know the honest truth, I feel like it's sort of fallen into place, both in terms of the fan feedback we got about how people feel about Gunner Stockton for the upcoming year. And I think a really good way to set this off is something I heard. Now it goes back probably a couple of weeks ago, the great former Georgia Bulldog, and also a really good, personality in the media, a guy who has a very thoughtful perspective on college football. David Pollack on his own podcast, I believe they're calling it C-Ball, Get Ball, or something. I probably butchered the name. But if you just search David Pollack on YouTube, you can find this. We'll also put a link up when we post the show at the world-famous DawgNation.com. Worth your time to see the full conversation. But the point here is that David Pollack said something about Gunner Stockton the other day that I think got a lot of people's attention. I think sort of speaks to the vibe that exists around Gunner right now for the people who fully buy into this, for the people who are maybe not quite so sure. I think the Pollack narration the other day sets the exact scene for maybe what some people think can be true for Gunner Stockton here this year. This is a bold prediction, kind of a hot take from David Pollack. Very interesting from his own podcast. Take a listen to this.
I think Gunner Stockton will have a better year this year than Carson Beck had last year. That's what I think. I'm just telling you, I've spent time with Gunner. He's been at our, Pollack Family Foundation golf tournament the past 2 years. I don't know that I've met a more humble kid. I mean, I'm just telling you, like, the dude he's an easy kid to cheer for. He's quiet. He's reserved. but he watches tape, he grinds, like he loves the game of football. I can tell you that he's not the perfect quarterback, but from a height perspective, from a release perspective. But here's another thing I can tell you too, is the Georgia quarterbacks that have done really great weren't the highly recruited ones all the time.
So very, very provocative opinion from David Pollack there. Gunner Stockton will be better this year than Carson Beck was a year ago. One of the reasons why that stands out to some people is that Carson Beck a year ago was a guy that came back to Georgia to win a Heisman Trophy and be a number 1 overall draft pick and reap millions of dollars in NIL payments. Of those 3 goals, probably the last one of those 3 goals was probably achieved. So, from that standpoint, there was a lot on Carson Beck a year ago. Almost none of that worked out the way that it was supposed to. And now when you turn the page to Gunner Stockton, who is a very different quarterback, people, in this case David Pollack, saying, I think he is going to be better than what Beck was last season. He'll come closer to matching the expectations that Beck had last year. Gunner will do that here this year. And when you listen to David Pollack say that, what you're struck by is just how much he seems to like Gunner Stockton. I tell you, I've had a lot of private conversations with people who just know more about this stuff than I do. And one of the things I try to do is stay connected with and, just around people who just know more than me. I benefit from people who have greater knowledge than I do. And people who are closer to it, people who know more than I do, they really, really like Gunner Stockton. And that's one of those things that you just can't ever quite get past, and you just can't quite ever move around, is the level of respect and admiration that people seem to have for his character and is just the vibe that he gives off. And some of that also kind of goes beyond just what media types say or former players say, even the current players. And we've seen this going back to when he came in against Texas in the SEC Championship and the first start he made against Notre Dame, although that was not a win, and everything since then, is that people just seem to kind of like what he is and like what he's about, and it just sort of seems to draw them closer to the Georgia program. In fact, let me let you hear the words from one of his teammates here for a moment. The presumed starter at center for Georgia this year was Drew Bobo. Bobo and Stockton are pretty close, and Drew talked the other day about kind of, his connection between, with Gunner Stockton and his feeling with Gunner. And I think some of the words that Drew uses here, perhaps not the only of the Georgia players that would say this about the fact that they just kind of like being around Gunner and like that connection with him. Here's Drew Bobo.
Yeah, I've known Gunner for a while, and so when he came in, we already had a little bit of a relationship, and we've became good friends as time went on. He's my roommate now, and it's really cool to have him behind me as we have a really good connection. He can, I think we communicate pretty well together, and it's good to be on the same page as him a lot of the time.
So there you go, man. I love playing with him, and Kirby Smart says going back to December in New Orleans before the Sugar Bowl, they all like playing with him. They play harder for him. You remember that statement? But here's the, I don't want to say problem, but here is the thing that you also have to add to this discussion. When it comes to an evaluation of Gunner Stockton, we've got to be really careful with the fact that so many people seem to like him so much, because it is just natural. It is just human nature that the things you want to be true, oftentimes you look in, you see them, and you have what's a little bit of a confirmation bias. You have a tendency to recognize that which you want to see, and sometimes you ignore maybe that which you don't want to see. So when I go around and I talk to people who are closer to the situation or who just simply know more about it, and I say, hey, what do you think about Gunner Stockton? Oh, my gosh, I think this kid's going to be special at quarterback. In the back of my mind, and I've told y'all before, one of my faults as a person, I have trust issues. Like I don't really trust people, narrative. I just don't trust things. I'm a very untrusting person. So in the back of my mind sometimes, even though I love Gunner Stockton, I mean, I've been touting Gunner Stockton on the show for years, even well before he became the Georgia starting quarterback. So even though I kind of personally believe that, when I'm hearing other people gush about Gunner Stockton, my first thought is, well, is this true, or is this what we really, really want to be true? Because the contrast is, while everybody really seems to like Gunner Stockton, for being completely honest, I don't know that could have been said about Carson Beck by the end of his Georgia career. Maybe it wasn't said always about Beck during his Georgia career, and maybe not all of that was fair. But there is a level of likability that seems to exist around Gunner that did not always seem to exist around Carson Beck. And so therefore, for some Georgia fans, they probably wonder the same thing that I do. Well, these positive reviews of Gunner, these affirmative predictions for Gunner, is this what we want because we like him, or is this what's actually going to happen? And I don't think that's an unfair question. In fact, after the SEC championship, when Gunner Stockton mania was at its, up to that point in time, apex. We'll see how high it gets this year. But at that point in time, we were at a little bit of an apex for Gunner Stockton mania. We provided some warnings about that on this show leading in that game against Notre Dame. Be very careful not putting too much on a guy making his first start. Now, some people were out there saying, oh, the next Stetson Bennett, oh my gosh. We said be very careful about doing that. Even though we want that to be true, and even though we really like this guy, it would be unfair to the guy that we like to sort of attach too much in the way of expectations, too much in the way of hype and praise, just simply because that's what we want to be true. We need to be careful about that. So that's kind of the situation around Gunner Stockton. People that we genuinely respect, such as David Pollack, say, when I look at this guy, I see a guy that can be very good for Georgia. But those statements, even from people that we like and respect, have not necessarily erased what is, I'll call it kind of a healthy skepticism among some Georgia fans, not the sort of cynical negativity that sometimes kind of gets on your nerves. I would say just sort of a general, hey, I love Georgia. I want the best for Georgia. I'm not quite so sure. You know, understand the difference? Like if you're on social media or message board, or if you're in our chat, you sort of know the difference between, oh my gosh, this guy always finds the negative thing to harp on, or, hey, this is a thoughtful fan trying to sort of see from all angles. I think some of what we have leading into the 2025 season with, by the way, G-Day coming up tomorrow, I think some of what we have is there are some just sort of really good Georgia fans who try to be as plugged in as they can, and they're trying to see this from all angles right now. And they, in a very honest and, kind of well-intentioned way, are trying to ask, well, how good can Gunner Stockton be really? And can he be good enough to get Georgia where it needs to go? So what we've done this week, and you already know this, we've been doing our over-unders. And I've invited you to participate. I got great participation on this. I really wish I could just read every single one of these for every single topic. Not easy to do. I am going to read a lot of these coming up in a moment because there was probably more energy around the Gunner Stockton number that we put forth than almost anything else. And I really feel good about this today because I really think we're about to have what I think is a pretty positive resolution on this. The sort of statement that maybe almost everybody can agree with, which would be an accomplishment given where things have maybe been at times over the course of the last few months. So you already know this. The over-under that we put forth for Gunner Stockton, over or under 26.5 touchdown passes. Where'd the 26.5 come from? Well, I was going to jokingly call this my proprietary formula, but I believe that's roughly stated the positional value of a Georgia quarterback. Typically speaking, a Georgia quarterback is worth about, in this age, in this era, worth about 26.5 touchdowns for a season. So will Gunner be over that or under that? Let's rattle through a few of these, and what you're going to see is a little bit of stuff on both sides, but some skepticism about this number overall. We'll do this kind of quick. Shannon Walker writes in via email to say he's got Gunner Stockton under 26.5 touchdown passes. Corey Stevens, though, writes in to say, I'm going to go under as well. He says, I'm not sold on Gunner. I can admit that the wide receiver room appears better on paper, but I can also admit that I was wrong about Stetson Bennett. And I hope that I'm wrong about Gunner Stockton, too. Being wrong will bring me joy. Can I pause for 1 second? This, to me, is a very, I think, honest appraisal of the situation. Sports fans show their love for their favorite sport, their favorite team, their favorite player by arguing about things. And it's fun to think about how a season might play out. That's why we make predictions. And sometimes we think the best of our favorite team, but sometimes we also kind of are a little concerned about our favorite team. And sometimes we may just take the under on the season, on the player, on the specific issue. But as Corey wrote in, I think this is just true, honest, genuine fan talk. And I think this is the kind of thing a good fan might say, hey, I've been wrong in the past and was happy to be so, and I hope I'm wrong this time. It'll bring me nothing but joy, a la the Stetson Bennett era, the way that, many people were happily proved wrong on that. If Gunner Stockton exceeds my expectations. But for now, I've got him under 26.5 touchdown passes. Very interesting from Corey Stevens. Rolling on here a little more, William Kuehl writes in to say, I think Gunner Stockton could throw for at least 26.5 touchdowns here this season. He's got a 70% completion rate. And he says he went to some AI on this. To say he's been doing some, doing well in the spring. He also said that Carson Beck had a 64.7 completion rate last year, down from where he was in 2023. By the way, more on that in a moment. He says, Stockton's also, making some comparisons to other all-time greats when it comes to completion percentage. So for a guy, according to William, that's completing a lot of his passes, throwing more touchdowns, maybe that is a strong possibility. William weighs in with some interesting thoughts on that. Greg Dawg, on the other side of that, though, says no. While our over-under has him at 26.5 touchdown passes, Greg Dawg's only got him at 24 for the 2025 season. Jeremy Smith, though, takes the over. He's got Stockton going over 26.5 touchdowns. We appreciate him weighing in. Christopher Calhoun writes in that he's also taking the under. He says, we've got explosive players at wide receiver and tight end, but you've also got a young offensive line. He says, to protect young players, you run the ball. Running the ball means more touches for the backs, especially inside the red zone. Last thing you want is for your young quarterback to take points off the board. He says, if I were coaching against the Dogs, I'd stack the box, stop the run, knowing that's what Kirby's going to want to do. On obvious passing downs, I'd blitz Gunner because of his youth. He says those blitzes will lead to Gunner Stockton pulling more balls down. He says, expect to see this until Gunner Stockton burns a few teams. So there you go. Christopher Calhoun taking the under on that. However, our buddy Bill Camacho says he's going to go over 35 touchdowns, way over the 26.5 that I said. Then finally, Danny Thomas also has him going under the 26.5. So there you go, handful of Georgia fans. And it's a pretty good, I think, distribution of some who say over, some who say under, which is probably a pretty accurate reflection of Dog Nation overall. Now, let me tell you what I think. Let me tell you why I think it. Even though I set the number, I also believe that Gunner Stockton will go under this number. However, as one of our writers or emailers kind of alluded to, I don't necessarily think under 26.5 for Gunner Stockton in terms of touchdown passes is necessarily a bad thing. Let me tell you why I feel that way. Let me remind you of something that happened a year ago, not 2024. I'm talking about more than the 2023 season, not last season, but a full year prior to that in 2023. It's one of those things that people, I think, sort of forget what the 2023 season was. In fact, using 26.5 of sort of a benchmark positional value for the Georgia quarterback, I think that people, if you ask them, how many touchdowns do you think Carson Beck threw in 2023? I believe you could probably win a bar bet with people on that number because that year, Georgia averaged 40.1 points per game. 40.1 points per game. They had Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey. You've heard that said plenty of times. Do you know how many touchdowns Carson Beck threw in 2023? 24. Carson Beck, in a great year for Georgia offensively, threw 24 touchdowns. Tied for 24th best in America, outside the top 20 when it comes to touchdowns thrown that season. In fact, for this 40.1 point per game offense that obviously, people back in the glory days when you had Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers, I honestly don't think people remember this. You know that Brock Bowers that year had 714 yards receiving, by his standard, an incredibly low total. 6 touchdowns that year, by his standard, especially against freshman season, an incredibly low total. And you know the reason why. He was injured. He didn't play for a good portion of that season. Now, when he played, boy, did he play. We know that. But those were not the sort of numbers that Bowers would have put up, or based on his previous career, did put up, that's a lower total for Bowers because of the injury. Ladd McConkey played even less. McConkey only had 2 touchdowns that year and just 478 receiving yards. So let's ask ourselves this question. Well, if Beck wasn't throwing touchdowns, and if Bowers and McConkey, 2 legitimately great players, were missing so much time, A, maybe Mike Bobo did a better job as OC than we give him credit for, but that's a different day. But B, how come they scored so many points? Like, where'd the points come from? If Beck wasn't throwing touchdowns at a nationally elite level, and if Bowers and McConkey, 2 great players, were missing a lot of time, then where'd the 40 points a game come from? You may know the answer to this. Did you know? And we don't, I mean, it wasn't even that, like, to my mind, that great of a rushing team, I don't think. But did you know in 2023, Georgia led the nation in rushing touchdowns? Like, we are less than 2 years removed from Georgia leading the nation in rushing touchdowns. Post Stetson Bennett, by the way, because he was a sort of a rushing touchdown machine in some respects. Less than 2 years removed from Georgia leading the nation in rushing touchdowns, with 40 of them bad boys, to the tune of 40.1 points per game. Y'all, that's the recipe for this year. If you want better play from Georgia offensively, now you got to have better offensive line play. Nobody denies that. But if you want to be an elite offense again, find a way to score that level of touchdown on the ground or something close to that. You don't need Gunner Stockton to be, whatever you want to compare him to. You don't. Better than Carson Beck was a year ago? Be nice, and not impossible, by the way. Somewhat similar to Beck in 2023? That's actually maybe more possible than you realize for a Georgia offense that found a lot of success on the ground. And this is why Nate Frazier is so important. This is why the potential emergence of Bo Walker is so important. This is why we're hoping for healthy returns for Roderick and Branson Robinson. That's why that could be so important. I'm not telling you this is a run-first team because, frankly, in 2023, they were not a run-first team. But they put the ball in the end zone when they needed to, and by all means, Cash Jones will include him on that too. What Georgia did on the ground in 2023 created remarkably elite level for the offense overall. And they could do the same thing in 2025 before you even get to what Gunner Stockton, with his own athleticism, might be able to provide, although we're not sure how much he's going to really run. So, bottom line on this, there's a little bit of split decision among Georgia fans about how good Gunner Stockton can be. But here's what we should all be able to agree on. Gunner Stockton does not have to be the best quarterback in America for Georgia to be an elite offense. It really doesn't. Because we have less than 2 years ago, full example of what elite offense looked like. 40.1 points per game with a quarterback who only threw for 24 touchdowns and your 2 best offensive weapons only playing for a portion and a partial part of the season. And yet somehow they still found a way to outscore almost everybody they played because of what they were able to do in the scoring area on the ground. If you can get what you think you can get out of Nate Frazier and the other running backs here, and if you can get improved play from the offensive line, at that point, good enough may truly be good enough when it comes to Gunner Stockton, this Georgia offense. My name's Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Kroger. We're glad you're with us. Video, 10 a.m. Normally it's live. Today we're about to be live with Kaylee Mansell and Jeff Sentell getting ready for G-Day. Radio, Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref, podcast, wherever you find them. Just very much happy to have you a part of the show. And a huge thanks to our friends at Kroger make it all possible, because not only are we getting ready for G-Day, we're getting ready for like Easter and things like that too. And so as you're getting stocked up on everything you need for the springtime of the year, for Easter, for summer vacations and things like that that'll be here before you know it, the Kroger Boost membership program is a great way to get all of that. The stuff that you're already buying at Kroger anyway, you get twice the fuel points on those purchases at Kroger. Kroger, that saves you money at the pump. You can also take advantage of free grocery delivery, free pickup, all of that coming your way when you're a Kroger Boost member. So find out more online. It's Kroger.com/boost. That is Kroger.com/boost for more on that today. All right, as I told you, we got Jeff Sentell. We have got Kaylee Mansell coming up in a moment. G-Day is tomorrow. I'll see you there after the game for the Dog Nation post-game show at the UGA bookstore. Getting ready for a fun spring. Our Cody Chafins did a great job putting a nice, maybe not quite a hype video, but certainly an anticipation video of why we love G-Day and the excitement that it has during the spring. A hype video. Well, it's still a hype video. Just a really, really fun thing. Hope you saw that on the Dog Nation social channels. All that is really good. We're getting ready for a great day tomorrow. And let's talk about one of the guys for a moment we might see as we go around the DawgHouse, presented today by our friends at Zagoria Law. I think one of the most exciting things for when I think about the Georgia offense when it does throw it this year, we just talked about why there could be really big value for Georgia on the ground, comparing it to a formerly elite Georgia offense. But when I think about when Georgia does throw it, at least in part, one of the guys that I think is a really interesting weapon for this Georgia team this year, that's Dillon Bell. And the truth is, while he'll be on the receiving end of passing plays, the other thing we like about Bell is in 2023, when Georgia, as we said, was very good offensively, they were getting a lot of interesting creative uses out of Bell, who threw a touchdown against Tennessee, who played some running back, also played some wide receiver. And maybe in 2024, that wasn't the plan for Bell. Maybe that's not what Bell wanted to do. In fact, we've been led to believe here this spring that Dillon went to Kirby Smart and actually volunteered to kind of go back and do some things the way that he was doing in the past, which I think is a real team-first perspective for him on that, and the sort of thing that Dillon talked about with reporters just the other day about the fact that he is now willing to kind of let his full versatility, all the different things he can do, whether it's running back, wide receiver, whatever, to allow that to be on display. This is Dillon Bell.
I feel like me being versatile, helping the team as much as I can, I feel like that was something that I want to do for the team. I'm a team player. I do whatever it takes to win championships and things like that, and it's great, all it's going to do is just help me at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, we're trying to win, and whatever it takes, they're going to put any of the guys in the positions best to help us win. And, but at the end of the day, I still got to learn both positions, so, yeah.
Listen, I think that's outstanding from Dillon Bell, a real team-first mentality. He also talked about encouraging Zachariah Branch to transfer to Georgia, just really demonstrating a lot of team-first type stuff, and I think that's really cool to see. But it's not just like the intangible characteristic that matters on that. I think that Dillon Bell can be a really good player in this role, too. In fact, talk to a guy that's always been a big believer in Bell and someone who knows the wide receiver position better than just about anybody. Terrence Edwards on DawgNation Daily last week said in the role that Bell was in 2023, that could be really special for Georgia in 2025 as that is replicated. This is what Terrence said not too long ago on this show about that.
That was the best season that he had. I think that's the best way to use him. He's a very versatile football player. And if you just think long, the way NFL is going right now, you need versatile players that can play multiple positions. The roster size in the NFL is on a 3-man roster. So if I got a guy that can play running back, I got a guy that can play receiver, you have a chance of making the team because we can use you in multiple ways that we don't have to keep 2 other players. So you're essentially a 2-in-1 player that we can use that roster spot somewhere else. So if I could put on tape this year and show the NFL that I am a traditional receiver, but I have versatility to play running back as well. And I think that's where he's best suited for. And I like him in that role.
I think that's well said by Terrence Edwards. Really exciting to think about what Bell might be able to do, and hopefully we'll get a chance to see some of that on G-Day tomorrow. And that is Around the DawgHouse, presented today by our friends at Zagoria Law. Now, we've been talking about Zagoria Law for a long time, so hopefully you know what they're all about, especially if you find them in need of you find yourself in need of their services. I'm talking about here folks who've been bitten by a dog or injured by a dog, not your dog, it's a dog that wasn't properly cared for, maybe negligence on the part of the owner. And if you've been a victim in a situation like this, then just like any other personal injury situation, you deserve your chance to fight for the proper compensation, pain and suffering, medical bills perhaps, things of that nature. And that's what our folks at Zagoria Law want to help you with. They are the official dog bite injury lawyers of the Georgia Bulldogs. What that means is They literally wrote the book on how to win these kinds of cases. They are experts in a very narrow field of the personal injury law. They know it. They know how to win for you. They know how to work on your behalf, and that's what they can do. So if you are in a situation where you're in need of that because you or someone you love has been bitten or injured, then reach out to Zagoria Law today. Give them a call, 833-GA-DOG-BITE. Dog spelled D-O-G, 833-GA-DOG-BITE, or find them online at ZagoriaLaw.com. So let me just say before I get ready to give over to Kaylee and Jeff, I really appreciate you being a part of our shows this week, participating in our over-unders. Appreciate Mike stopping by and spending a couple of days with us because we kind of did some of this for the SEC. Kaylee and Cody and Danny and everybody's helped us kind of get these shows on the air. Jay Black, of course, a part of this too. I really appreciate that. By the way, Jay's got a big birthday coming up. I'll take a moment to wish him happy birthday. It's just really gratifying for me to know that, family time is important. And, I get a chance to sort of spend some time with my wife and kids here this week for spring break. That's really, really valuable for us. And it's nice to know that things run smoothly when I'm away. So for all of you who choose to be a part of what we do here on DawgNation Daily presented by Kroger, I really appreciate that. And for those behind the scenes that make this perhaps look smoother than it actually is, well, I really appreciate that too. So without further ado, can't wait to see you tomorrow in Athens for G-Day. That's going to be a great time. And if you can't be there in person, we'll tell you all about it with our pregame coverage with Kaylee at the UGA bookstore, and then me after the game, as we always are, for our Dog Nation postgame show right there for the UGA bookstore. We'll see you there for that. But for now, on more of everything that's been going on with Georgia this week and the build-up to G-Day tomorrow, let's let you hear live, recorded live if you're after the fact, but if you're watching here at the moment, live with Kaylee Mansell and Jeff Sentell right here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger.
Hello, Dog Nation, and welcome into DawgNation Daily on a Friday. I'm Kaylee Mansell, and a typical DawgNation Daily Friday usually means a little glimpse of Jeff Sentell, but I get the chance to sit down with him all morning today to talk G-Day. But, of course, since you are a recruiting insider, we got to do it from a recruiting perspective.
It is crazy. We get the big show, Kaylee. We did not. There was no internal memo about wearing black today, but we managed nonetheless. It's good to see Brandon. We'll get to see Brandon at G-Day tomorrow. And, folks, I guess I want to just shake everybody. Like, G-Day is tomorrow. The Masters is going on. Like, Georgia recruiting is hotter than Justin Rose's short game right now. So it's a good time.
Well, hopefully it lasts longer than 2 days because Justin Rose's time clock is just about up. So today we're going to do a full visitors list of all the guys that will be on the scene for G-Day. We'll go ahead and start with, we have official visitors first, but for those that maybe aren't as familiar with recruiting, like we're going to hear some unofficial guys and some official guys. Like, what's the difference between official and an unofficial visit?
Well, Kaylee, this kind of has a lot to do with money before it was kind of all about money. Back in the days when this was the only thing. So an unofficial visit means that you pay your transportation, you pay your lodging, you pay your way, you get to Georgia, and I think according to the way it's supposed to go, I believe then you pay $10 for a meal. Tickets are provided, but that's how it goes. Now, when you're on an official visit, let's take Malachi Lee, for example, the big tackle out of Honolulu, Hawaii. He has Georgia in his top 6. Doesn't really feel, we're not mentioning Malachi Lee. You were like, this is a guy that I don't expect to be in Georgia's class. But who knows, all the way from Hawaii, Georgia has started the Polynesian pipeline. But in this instance, Kaylee, what happens is Georgia basically has a car service meet you at your door, and then they will take, I believe, 3 family members with you, all expenses paid. So this is from Hawaii. It's still not the longest trip. Georgia has brought in families from Australia before, but from Hawaii, you will go all the way across the country. You arrive at Georgia, you get fed more than an army would get fed over the weekend. You get tickets to the game, you get a photo shoot, you get all kinds of meetings, all kinds of presentations, all kinds of tours, sit-downs. And really, the difference between official and unofficial is Georgia pays for everything for a 48-hour period from when you leave your house till you get back home.
So before we talk about the guys that are going to be on the scene. We have to talk about one who isn't, because it was unclear whether he was going to be there, because he was, and then he wasn't, and then he was, and now he's not. And that's the 5-star quarterback, Jared Curtis. What happened? Why is he not taking a visit anymore?
Yeah, as the recruitment turns, Kaylee.
Yeah.
I mean,
How the turntables.
We have our soap opera theme music for Before the Hedges that every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Let me get a shameless plug in there. Hope BA won't mind. It is. But you know, there's all these reasons for this that are professional, maybe even transactional. But for this one, Jared Curtis was at G-Day last year, so he knows exactly what that's like. But Jared's going to enroll early wherever he goes. So this means his junior prom this year is really his senior prom. So this is his last chance at a quote unquote real prom, because next year he'll either be in Oregon or Georgia, immersed in quarterbackingness. And so this is one that they thought, you know what, let's do this one last time. Let's have our senior prom, our junior year. And I think the interesting part about this, Kaylee, is he was scheduled visits to both schools, but now since he can't go to Georgia, he's not going to take a visit to Oregon as well. I believe an issue of fairness there comes into mind. And again, May 5th is what we're told is his decision date, Georgia, Oregon. Kaylee, depending on the way things go, I hear Georgia positive stuff all the time regarding Curtis, and I would still say Georgia sits in a good spot. But Kaylee, this is also an interesting time where you can front load your NIL before the July 1st deadline that's happening all over college football, where you can make a payment to an athlete prior to the new salary stipulations coming in. So who knows what's going to happen there with Oregon and them finding all kinds of Nike money to really sweeten the pot there for Jared Curtis. But not going to be at G-Day when he was scheduled to be at G-Day. But I don't know, Kaylee, how do you feel? Like, can the young man go to his prom?
I just thought it was important to clarify, because with such a high-profile recruit, if you see that, hey, maybe the headline, Jared Curtis isn't attending G-Day anymore, you're automatically going to assume that it has something to do with Oregon. So I thought it was important to talk about off the top, because it's just a kid wanting to be a kid, and that's something that you have to respect, especially, too, since he's not going to get one more. So I thought we would go ahead and lead with that. So nobody fret. It's not because he's already decided he's going to one school over the other. Just a kid who wants to be a kid. Yeah,
and the most up-to-date information I have is decision has not been made. Really has not been made. Really close, really torn. Loves Georgia. Also loves the opportunities there at Oregon. So that is very much a still-to-be-determined situation.
All right, so now let's go ahead and move on. We'll start telling you who's going to be on the scene, starting with the official visitors. There's only two. The first one is going to be Jarrah Edwards, the 4-star safety out of Maryland. He's been on the Georgia radar for a while, so why do you think he's using G-Day as his official visit?
Interesting, Kaylee. He loves Georgia, everything about Georgia. He was the guy that called Kirby Smart a legend earlier this year in an interview. Georgia's going to be his first official visit, and I believe that KJ Bolden will be his host on his official visit. One other thing in that long explanation about official visits is there's usually a player host that is your tour guide for all things Georgia. Jarrah is like a top 5 safety across the country, a really strong player, physical. He's one of those guys that will smack you, and that's a great example right there, because he feels like, and I would agree with him, that there's not a lot of guys that love collisions and that love just annihilating offensive players, but that's what he's all about, his game. I was talking to him this week about his game, Kaylee, and he said, you know, kind of a little bit of mix of maybe Sean Taylor and Kyle Hamilton. That's kind of the way he wants to be. He wants to be a safety that can play the ball in the air, can ball hawk a little bit, but he also wants people to have headaches after they get through playing him.
I mean, I'm getting a headache just watching him take down people. So the other official visitor that we have on this list is someone that you just talked about, and that's going to be Malachi Lee out of Hawaii, a top 200 player, number 10 offensive tackle. And this is actually the first official visit that he'll take to any school, and I feel like that says a lot that you're starting with Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia, kind of like Jarrah, Georgia has the chance to really set the bar for Malachi. And, you know, we mentioned it earlier, obviously, Polynesian players, I've been told this over and over so much, Kaylee, that they want to make sure that there are other Polynesian players where they're going. And Georgia now has a sort of a pipeline in effect there with Mike Uni, who's a sophomore redshirt freshman offensive lineman. So, you know, they've got a chance here with him. And I think the best way to call that is a chance. And, you know, to be fair, Kaylee, both of these are kind of recruitments, even though Georgia's getting their first official, where I think the Dogs have to really set the tone because they're not, I would say, the leader in either one of these. Like Jari even says that Texas A&M is his leader right now, so Georgia's going to have to make up some ground there. But he's excited by both of these guys are excited by Georgia. They get to see somewhat of a simulated game environment there at Georgia. I would expect DawgNation will be loud and proud and show them, listen, when I talk to a recruit after a G-Day visit, especially an official visit, if they're not saying, man, I can't wait to see what a game looks like here because it's awfully loud here and it's only a spring game. So that's one of the things, Georgia's going to put its best foot forward. They never have a bad official visit, but I think these are both recruitments where they're great players, especially Edwards. I think he would be an ideal Georgia safety. But I don't know if Georgia can close the deal with either of them this weekend, especially since it's so early with an April official visits. And most official visits now, Kaylee, take place in June.
And we'll see that with a lot of the guys that will be on the unofficial list. They're going to take their unofficial visit to G-Day, but will go on to make their officials later on in June. So we'll go ahead and pull up the first page here. So I kind of want to group two of these guys together, and that's going to be the 5-star tight end Mark Bowman and then the 4-star wide receiver Vance Spafford, who's already a Georgia commit. So you can see both of them are California kids. Vance Spafford's already made his commitment, but I think it's very clear that if these two go to Georgia, they want to go together. And Mark Bowman and Georgia have had mutual interest in one another for a long time, even when he wasn't a part of the 2026 group. But now you've got Texas and Oregon also in the mix for Mark Bowman. So I think this is a big weekend for the two of them.
It is, Kaylee. I would say Georgia's best chance at outpunching, maybe even outbidding Texas and Oregon for Mark Bowman is to make sure they still have Vance Spafford in the fold. Now, USC is really coming after them hard. USC currently the #1 rated recruiting class in the country because they have 21 commitments right now, Kaylee. As a means of comparison, Georgia has 5. And what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to flip those California kids and get them away from Georgia. All I know is this: Bowman is an absolute machine at tight end. I'm going to make the statement here. The film, the route running, he is more advanced than Brock Bowers was at the same age. Now, does he have the insane competitive gene? I don't think so. I don't think we'll see very few players ever at the University of Georgia that had a will and a motivation to get better quite like Brock. But, Kelly, I remember Nate Frazier told me about Mark Bowman. He was the first person a couple years ago. They called him Baby Brock at Mater Dei. He wore number 19. He embraced it. Kaylee, he can really move. He was initially a 2027, he was initially a 2026 kid growing up. He classed back to 2027, and then he classed up this year. And I can just, in my mind, every time I think about Mark Bowman and I write about Mark Bowman, I realize from the jump, Kaylee, how much he always kind of revered what Georgia did at tight end. And he appreciated the example set by Brock Bowers. And he's told me several times that Georgia's going to be in this thing till the end. Texas looms pretty large here as well, though.
So we'll go ahead and go back to that list and move on to Davon Benjamin. So Georgia is a part of his top 8, and some recruiting experts even have the Dogs landing him. So how big of a visit is it for him this weekend?
It's interesting because he's rated as a safety, Kaylee, and he's out in California. We're talking about a lot of California targets here. Some of the recruiting sites actually have him as a corner. I think that's what Georgia sees him as, but this is a guy that has Georgia in his top group. This is an unofficial visit that should pay the way for the official visit. And let's face it, Kaylee, cornerbacks, Georgia just lost one recently from a decommitment of flip, John Tavius Wyman to Miami. So missed on Jordan Edwards. There's another name on this list that comes up very interesting to me at the cornerback spot, but Georgia needs to get some work done at the cornerback spot. And we also must admit this: Dante Williams, California guy, was formerly at USC, has connections with every coach. He's on every coach's phone, saved in the contacts, every high school coach in California. So anytime I hear cornerback Dante Williams visiting Georgia, I think there's a strong chance there.
All right, and the last name on that list, who we haven't got to touch on, and someone who's really close to the program, and that's Ekene Ogboko, because his brother, Nnamdi Ogboko, is already here at Georgia. Does that help at all in this? Because when you look at his teams that are in the mix, it's Georgia, Clemson, Alabama, all really local to where he's from in Durham, North Carolina. So does the fact that he have a tie, will that have any impact on what his decision will end up being?
I think familiarity really helps the Dogs here. Of course, his older brother is probably in the 2 deep now at nose for the Dogs after just one redshirt season. And the Ogboko's family, they know Georgia. They're comfortable with Georgia. They've been to on all the official visits and unofficial visits, and they've came to see Nnamdi practice. So they know exactly what they're getting there with Georgia more than any other school. And it's interesting the position flex, I guess, a little bit for this prospect here, because he was initially seen as a 5-star offensive tackle, and now he's kind of a number 30, number 45 overall player. But some of the analysts now see him as a kind of a swing tackle, a guy that can play the guard or the tackle spot. He's been to Georgia more than any other school. All those visits have gone smoothly to stellar, and this is another chance for, I think he came to 2 or 3 games last year, so this is another chance for Georgia to show why they're different.
So we'll go to our next page of unofficial visitors, and this first one is someone who's right in Georgia's backyard, and that's the 4-star edge, Kamari Brooks. It really looks like it's coming down to Georgia and Alabama for him. Is there any concern that Georgia signed 3 edges in the 2025 class? Is that an issue for him?
I don't think so, because it looks like one of them is going to kick inside early on, and then that would be Isaiah Gibson. But the other thing with that is Georgia hadn't signed any in years past. They went kind of light. And you also got to remember Kaylee, Samuel Mpemba, Damon Wilson, those guys have all transferred out at the edge position recently. So Kamari's just a really special player. One of the things I always, when I look at when we leave the studio after one of our Before the Hedges shows, I always kick myself, because I was like, I don't really hit hard about how good a player Kamari Brooks is. Kaylee, he is one of the most intelligent players you'll ever see. He is a 2-time state champion in basketball. Kaylee, his high school basketball highlight tape goes 11 minutes. It's like your high school basketball highlight tape. It goes 11 minutes. We're not even talking about the football part here, where he led North Oconee on defense and offense to the state championship last year. He was an impact receiver. He was an impact defender. He basically took over the state title game against Marist last year. He has relatives. He has a step-grandfather, I believe, that was on the 1980 national championship team. Horace King, his great-uncle, was one of the first 5 African-American football players at Georgia. David Pollack has been coaching him since he was in middle school, when Pollack's team saw Kamari Brooks, and he was reading the plays already off all the armbands, and he was figuring out where everybody was doing. And he was like in the 4th or 5th grade. Pollack's like, this dude has to play on my youth teams. They made that happen. And Kaylee, one of the main things I love about him is he's very, very focused in everything he's done. Kaylee, he got to a top 3 back in January. Now he knows he's down to a top 2. He dropped Clemson out of that list, and he's going to still visit Texas. He's still going to visit USC. But it's really Georgia and Alabama here. And Kelly, one more thing in all this gushing stuff I've got to say about Kamari Brooks. Last time I talked to him, he was getting ready to go to spring break. And I was like, hey, man, what you doing? He's like, do you mind if I talk to you while I do my laundry? And, of course, that showed up in the story. But I asked him about laundry, and he says, yeah, my mom, she's had me doing my laundry since I was in middle school. You got all that. The state championships, the legacies, the focused kid, the maturity of the championships. He's an edge, and he's playing basketball very well. And the young man's done his own laundry since middle school. That, my friend, is a guy that's going to hit in college football, and that's why I think Georgia is really after Kamari Brooks.
I did not, on my bingo card, it did not have me and Kamari Brooks having so much in common. I've always done my laundry, and I always call my mom, even now when I'm doing laundry. I don't know, it just makes me think about her.
Raised right. That's what you're talking about. You're raised right.
Start them young. All right, so in terms of Zach Fort, he's another Georgia commit that's going to be here this weekend and will play a role in making the other guys in this group feel comfortable. Let's talk about Peyton Dyer. We talked a little bit about him on Before the Hedges the other night. He's the 4-star cornerback out of Duluth. a South Carolina commitment who recently decommitted. And it all kind of comes at an interesting time because Georgia loses the 4-star cornerback Jontavius Wyman to Miami. Now all of a sudden Peyton Dyer's back on the board. Kind of seems like the pieces are falling into place.
It seems Dyer is one of those guys. Georgia's prioritized him for a while. He's just a Georgia corner, and what I mean by that is physical, Kamari Lassiter. He will hit you in the mouth. And, you know, Jontavius Wyman was a lot of things, but he wasn't a typical Georgia corner. He was more of a playmaker, more of a return man, an offensive specialist type guy. But, you know, Peyton's a guy, big, physical. I think he could play quicker than Jontavius was. He's from the state of Georgia as well, and not too far away at Duluth High School. So, you know, Peyton, I've been a big fan of his game for a while, and I think now it's funny. Every time he tweeted out or shared social media edits, he would always have to put with another school, not committed, because he was still committed to South Carolina, and now Beamer Ball the door is opened up for the Dogs and everybody else to rush in. And he's one of those guys, don't believe the hype on, or the lack of hype on the rankings here, because I think he's rated as a number 27 corner. Kaylee, I don't think there's 3 or 4 corners in the country that Georgia likes better than Peyton Dyer.
And he's an in-state kid. So last one on the list is going to be Carter Lucky. There might not be another person on this list that's been to as many G-Days as Carter Lucky. Of course, he's the brother of Lawson Lucky. Right. His dad, his uncle, so many ties to Georgia, and he's a defensive lineman. Where do things stand with him now? Can we get an update on Carter Lucky?
Well, Carter, he told me this week that he's working his way back from a shoulder injury he suffered, doing some running now. Carter is a Georgia legacy. His uncles, his dad, his brother, Kenny and his mom, Hillary, are in the Georgia end zone section. Such a heartwarming sight to see those guys every game. And now he can kind of see how his brother's succeeding at Georgia. I don't know. There's recently some social media commercials of his brother showing off his thespian skills, his acting skills at a popular fast food breakfast spot. KJ Bolden is in those too as well. But Carter, and I know we live in a soundbite culture, but Georgia, he's a legacy. His brother's there. The one thing the Dogs are not doing is they're not taking all of that for granted. They're recruiting him like his last name is Tuiasosopo or something like that. Carter told me, and it was one of those headlines in a story, he says Georgia is recruiting the HE double hockey sticks out of me. And for Georgia to have all those connection and all that built-in goodwill and appreciation and buy-in, but to still recruit Carter as hard as anybody in the country, it says a lot about how much the Dogs want him.
So we'll move to the last page here. It's got 5 guys. 2 of them are already commits in the class of 2026. That's Lincoln Keys, Brady Marchese. We've had the conversations about how stable are the commitments. These 2 seem to be the most stable as of now. When looking at 4-star safety Tamarian Watkins, all the recruiting experts have him going to South Carolina. So does this visit mean anything, or is it one of those situations where, hey, you just want to go see another school because you can?
No, Georgia's really clearly in the thing for T-Watt right there. And all Georgia can do is they can point to Chris Cole, because Chris Cole was ranked as a safety, but then converted to backer, and that's how Georgia sees T-Watt, Tamarian Watkins, out of Rock Hill, South Carolina. Very impressive player. He's one of those athletes that's going to be big enough when he puts on weight to play at a place like Georgia. And when Schumann says you can play linebacker at Georgia, I think that's a huge compliment, and that's something that the young man has to take very, very seriously. You know, one of the things about this list is we flash these graphics. Kelly, there's going to be like 60, 70, 80 recruits there. There's going to be a lot of 2027s and 2028s, but we've kind of highlighted sort of, you know, the marquee guys or the more impressive names, and we're sticking to the 2026 class here with a lot of this, because I think that's just short term, and that's the current recruiting cycle, and Georgia's going to have a lot of key visitors. And this is one of those weekends, Kaylee, where for a lot of them, this is a seeds weekend. What I mean by that is Georgia plants a seed with these young men and their families, and they're like, gosh, if that's what a spring game looks like, I can't wait to see what the fall looks like, or, you know, how much the fans appreciate all of them. I mean, this is one where these are visits that Georgia does good work in April, and then they want to come back in May for the scavenger hunt, or then back in June for their official visits.
So let's really quick rate these guys Olympic style. Like if you had to go a bronze, silver, and a gold visitor, who would they be?
Interesting. I've got to go gold for Mark Bowman. That's probably not going to surprise a lot of folks. He's the highest rated guy there. My silver medal guy is actually Vance Spafford, because I think those two guys are connected.
Hand in hand.
Yeah, you keep Spafford in the fold. Those two guys, not only are they from the same state, but they've played with each other on the same California Power 7-on-7 team for a couple years now. And 7-on-7 is different for this group they play in. Kaylee, they're usually somewhere across the country every weekend playing 7-on-7 football, so those guys have grown pretty close. You could actually call them essentially almost quasi-high school teammates there. So Spafford and Bowman are the top two. And then the third one, that was a really tough one. I thought about this one for a little bit. I would think the third one probably needs to be Peyton Dyer, but I'm really thinking hard about Gerard Edwards as well, because he really likes Texas A&M. That's his leader. He also likes Alabama a lot. There was some flip-flop a little bit with Georgia and Alabama with their OVs. So I really like Mr. Edwards in his game right there. But if honesty compels me to admit, because that's a line we're allowed to use on this show, Peyton Dyer, in-state cornerback. I think Georgia could really use his services as well in the class. So let's act like some Winter Olympic style, and people are tying for bronze medals. That's what I'm going to do there.
So in just a moment, Jeff Sentell and I will go through all of Brandon's over-unders that he released last week, and we'll give our own. But first, I want to give a shout-out to Royal Caribbean. A week from today, I will be leaving, even though we're not leaving until Monday, and it's just getting me so excited about what's to come. Jeff and I got to spend a lot of time together on the DawgNation cruise, along with his wonderful wife, Erin, and I'm excited to be on Utopia of the Seas. I have watched every YouTube video on the internet, the ins and outs of the ship. Like, I know it's going to be even greater than I imagine, and for all of you that are coming with us, I'm so excited to get to hang out with y'all, talk some Dogs football, but more importantly, just be on this ship that's literally like a city on water. So even if you couldn't join us on the DawgNation cruise, make sure you reach out to Jessica Slater either at 770-718-9147 or email her at jslater@dreamvacations.com to figure out when you can get on the next Royal Caribbean cruise, specifically Utopia of the Seas here, which we're going to have a ton to talk about whenever we get back. All right, so my favorite bets to make are the ones that come from the BA book. Don't know where he gets the numbers, but seems to do a good job. So we'll bring up his point totals here that he released last week, and we'll just go through each one. Jeff, the number for points per game is set at 35.5. Are you going to take the over or the under?
I'm going to go over there, Kaylee. I think the Dogs have the playmakers to get it done on both sides of the ball, and I also just look back previous years. Georgia's, some of their better teams average 40, 41 points a game. So I think they can get over 35.5 this season. I think the home schedule helps out a lot, where some of those tougher games a year ago are on the road. Now they'll be at home.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wrote in my notes, too. I think that Georgia just played so many tough games on the road, and when looking back at the schedule from last year, they tend to score more at home. I think that plays to their advantage, and they bring in way too many playmakers for them not to be averaging that many points a game. But because of that, on the flip side, I'm also going to take the over on points per game allowed, which I believe is set at 16.5. The defense loses a lot of key players in Jalen Walker, Malachi Starks, Dan Jackson, and even some of the guys on the defensive line who aren't as big names but have so much experience on the line. There's going to be a lot of new faces on the defense this year. They're going to play some really high-powered offenses. So I think even though they're going to score more, they're also going to give up a little bit more.
This one's a tough one, Kaylee. I think this is a year where Georgia's recruiting kind of flashes, and what I mean by that is Georgia's stashed away a whole ton of players from the #1 recruiting class in 2024. I think, and you're looking at Michael right there. Michael wasn't available for a lot of the games last year, and I think Georgia has the pieces. It may be a Chris Cole for Jalen Walker. It may be Elijah Griffin for Michael Williams already, but I think Georgia, I expect, bump years for Jordan Big Baby Hall and also Xavier McLeod. I think they're going to go under. I really do, because I think What they're going to try to do, Kaylee, is they're going to try. I think they'll be great in the secondary. They've got 4 great corners. I think they'll be great in the secondary, but I also think they're going to run the ball a lot more offensively, and that's going to shorten some of these games.
Yeah, and going off what you said in terms of the next one, which is Gunner Stockton touchdown passes, set at 26.5. Because I think they're going to run the ball a lot more, I'm actually going to take the under on this. When you look back at Carson Beck's first season as the starter, it's only 24. And I just think that Georgia's going to rely on the run game so much more this year. So I'm going to take the under on Gunner Stockton touchdown passes. And 2, I think that they're going to want Ryan Puglisi to play in games where Georgia gets ahead. So in those games like your Marshalls and the other kind of weaker home games, they're going to want to get Puglisi in there. So it'll limit some of that playing time too.
I'm going to shock you with this one.
You're going to take the over?
Kaylee, because I think about it. Those are all good points you made. Carson Beck, I don't know if that's the anomaly to look for. I kind of look at Jake Fromm's years at Georgia. Jake Fromm had a 30 touchdown pass season. He had a 27 touchdown pass season. Kaylee, none of those teams are going to have the weapons that this Georgia football team has. One of my bolder kind of stick your chest out and say it thoughts on this year's team is I think there may be 4 or 5 minimum better options at receiver for Georgia this year than last year. 2 of them are easy. Colby Young, he's better than he was last year because he wasn't around last year. Dillon Bell, I think he'll be better. And then I start going Zachariah Branch. I start going Noah Thomas. And then I start thinking about Talon Taylor and C.J. Wiley. I think the way you can win with the Georgia model is to spend and have those top flight, 2nd round, 3rd round pick and up receivers. I think Gunner's going to throw more because of the weapons around him. But also, I didn't even mention a tight end. I didn't even mention Mr. Williams. I didn't even mention Mr. Barbour. But a lot of those numbers were Brandon, and that's a good number Brandon picked. It made me think about it for a little bit. But, Kaylee, I expect Georgia to play 15 games, 16 games. This is the college football playoff era. Jake Fromm didn't have those eras. And I believe Stetson Bennett's 2022 season, I think he threw 27 touchdown passes. And I think Carson threw 4 in relief. So I think Gunner gets over this number. I really do. And it's one of those things I had to think about. But I think, one thing to think about touchdowns, and this is the last thing I'll say about this, is like 31 touchdowns is what Georgia had in 2022. But they had 44 touchdowns on the ground. I think a Georgia healthy offense this year, for all you Mike Bobo fans out there, I know you're out there, I think Georgia should get from 65 to 75 touchdowns this year. That's a pretty good range. Can they get 30 from the run game? Can they get 30 from the throw game and then 35 from the run game, especially if Georgia plays an SEC championship game or a couple of playoff games? I think they can.
Well, to my last point, because I do think that Georgia's going to run the ball more, I think that Nate Frazier goes over easily on Brandon's number, which is 809.5. I was looking at last year when he rushed for, 671?
Yeah.
And there were 6 games where he had less than 10 carries. He covers that number easy.
Yeah. Kaylee, this is the easiest one.
Yeah.
I mean, if Nate Frazier starts 12 games for Georgia, barring injury, and let's knock on all the wood that it is in these directors' chairs in the studio.
Everybody at home do it simultaneously.
And I think Georgia's running backs really feel disrespected, especially because by some of those ESPN proclamations that that's the weakest part of the team and everything else like that. And while they may be right, especially I think Georgia is going to get a lot of juice from Bo Walker this year, the freshman. I think Cash Jones will be there. I think Dwight Phillips will show you something. And then I think Chauncey Bowens will show you something. Not to mention the unknowns, which are the Robinsons in the backfield. But I think Nate is a guy that, Kelly, it's kind of crazy. Like, if you do this now and you play 15 games, 16 games, Nate only has to average 50 yards a game to crash that number. And I think he'll go over that.
Does he go over 1,000?
I don't think so. I think 950-ish, and it might be just a thing where Georgia gets that close. Maybe they find some yards. But one of the things Georgia's going to do is because Nate Frazier is so valuable to this team, Kaylee, is in those games where there's 2 of them to begin the year where I don't think Nate Frazier will get more than 10 carries per game in those 2 games, just so Georgia can tune up for Tennessee. I think they want to show the rest of the backfield, the Bo Walkers, the Cash Jones, the Dillon Bells as well. They want to show off the depth of the backfield in some of these games so they can preserve Nate for those really big football games.
All right, last one. It's all SEC selections. First team, number set at 3.5. Are you going to go over or under?
Over.
Yeah, I'm going to take the over as well.
Yeah, Brandon's really conservative with this one.
I know.
Because listen, my good friend Connor Riley, he knows that I have a lot of stakes put on Noah Thomas. And like one of our shows, I believe we were filling in for Brandon on another holiday week for him, is that I said that I think Noah Thomas will be the best player on Georgia's roster this year. And now he knows that I'm the stock up everywhere guy. I'm carrying all the stock around DawgNation. I think Noah can be a first-team All-SEC selection because I think he can get 10 touchdowns. I would look to the defense, and I would say maybe one of C.J. Allen or Chris Cole, I think, could be an All-SEC selection. Now, first team saying a lot, but then you've got to think about Dalen Everett, K.J. Bolden. There's some options there. Ernest Green on the offensive line. It's going to be tough, but I think Georgia can get to 3.5. But this is where I'm going to be sneaky good on this. I said all this stuff to say I really think Georgia has the odds-on favorite for the first-team kicker and the first-team punter and Brett Thorson and Peyton Woodruff.
I wrote that in my notes. I said that's where it comes into play, can get you the overs, the guy on special teams.
Yeah.
I think Connor calls it a Disney dog. Maybe that's what I am. I didn't even have to think twice about taking the over on this. Give me someone like K.J. Bolden, one of the tight ends, maybe Oscar Delp, Lawson Lucky. I had put Peyton Woodring / Brett Thorson, and definitely somebody else on the defense. So I'm going to take the over here.
Also, special teams dogs. Think about this. Kirby loves it. All three phases. Zachariah Branch, kick returner, punt returner. That's another guy that's going to put some points up on the board in Athens.
All right, so in just a moment, we are going to do our G-Day hype video, even when Cody Chaffins is not with us. He is always working. But first, tomorrow we're going to have events at the UGA bookstore. I'll do my pregame show before. It'll start at 11. Then, of course, Braden Adams with the postgame show directly after the game. Come beforehand, get you some gear before the game, but also there's autograph opportunities. They're going to have Dan Jackson, the football player, not the baseball player, as well as Buck Ballou from 10 to 12, and some surprise guests. It's a special opportunity to get autographs from a few UGA greats. So come hang out with us for the pregame show, grab you some great gear, and then get an autograph signing while you're there. And if not, make sure to stop by after the game to come watch Brandon Adams do his legendary postgame show. So with that, we will do our long finish. I love this video because it is the perfect blend of the spring game and the Masters, because when it comes to G-Day, it is a tradition like no other. And just so there's clarification on this, because I had to ask, no AI. That was actually a drone that they brought to get footage of them painting the G on the field, which I thought was really cool.
I mean,
he does it again.
We need a honors show or something for Cody Chaffins. Like, one of the things we could do a segment on Before the Hedges is we could rank Cody's best works for Before the Hedges, and
it would be hard.
I mean, there's like music artists now that at the beginning of their works it says like Mike Will made it or Swiss Beats or whatever.
Producer tag.
Producer tag. I think we need to start putting a playing card for Ace, Cody Chaffins or whatever, but like. He needs to start stamping his stuff, man, because that makes me want to go drink an Azalea drink, and it makes me want to go look for the Spike Squad on G-Day.
Yeah, maybe we should start giving him long drinks when we feel like he's done an excellent job. Weekend's almost here. You guys know what that means. It's finished long drink time, at least for me. It always is. It's what I look forward to. Almost every single weekend that I get the chance to have one, I will be not having one until after G-Day, of course, because I will be working. But now that it's getting into springtime in the summer, it's so easy to just have a pre-made cocktail. The long drink is a gin-made cocktail, but even if you don't like gin, I promise, just give it a try. There's a flavor for everyone, whether it's the classic blue, the zero sugar white can, the black one that's a little bit stronger, or if you like the flavored ones like the peach or the cranberry or allegedly the pineapple that exists, but I'm not totally sure because I've never seen it. And if you want to find out where you can find the nearest one to you, the Long Drink makes it super easy. Just go to thelongdrink.com, go to that top search bar, put in your city or your zip code, and it'll tell you where you can pick up the nearest one. So before we start to wrap up on the show, let's hear from former Georgia quarterback Jake Fromm on the Kroger Fresh Take. It's time for our Kroger Fresh Take with the former quarterback Jake Fromm to talk all things G-Day. And honestly, at this point, it's crazy to even think that we're having a discussion about G-Day because it feels like just yesterday I was listening to you talk about the SEC championship and the playoffs. So the fact that we're even here just goes to show how fast time really does fly. G-Day looks a little bit different this year, not televised, you have to pay to get in. What do you sort of make of all the changes that have happened to G-Day this last year?
Yeah, honestly, that's new news to me. I didn't even know that it's not going to be televised. So, and that is like such an interesting twist about how these spring games are kind of changing. You know, are they going to get to kind of a model of playing other programs? You know, that's kind of been said and mentioned and kind of pushed for. So it's going to be so interesting to see this evolution of how the spring game changes. Some coaches, some programs kind of want to keep their cards close and not show what's going on, and others just really want to put on basically a show. So it's going to be kind of interesting to kind of hear the feedback of how this G-Day is. Personally, you know, G-Day coinciding with the Masters to me is never like great and ideal for timing. But it is what it is, and you got to do what you got to do sometimes.
Yeah, you mentioned that G-Day looks a little bit different just depending on the team. I mean, some teams aren't even having G-Day this year. But when you think about it from a quarterback standpoint, like, what's the thing that you get the most out of G-Day? Is it the crowd noise or just being in the stadium with a bunch of people? Like, what was the main benefit for you as a quarterback in playing the spring game?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was another, especially in my later years, you know, when I'm the guy, I'm going out there, I wanted to see the other guys in the huddle, and I wanted to see their eyes. I wanted to see if I could basically, you know, trust them. How were they with the lights on in front of people? You know, was the moment too big for them, or were they locked in and ready to go make a play? So now for me, it was kind of already learning kind of which guys I could trust, which guys I could count on. When, man, it's kind of getting down to the nitty gritty of who's going to make a play for me and who I needed to get the ball to.
So a new season always brings some sort of new storylines. And unlike last year, this year, one of the main narratives is going to be who's going to be the starting quarterback. Is it Gunner Stockton? Is it Ryan Puglisi? Of course, both of them will get a chance to showcase their skills on Saturday. But from what you've heard, your intel, like, how real is that quarterback battle?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think this is 100% Gunner's to lose. I think Gunner's the guy. He's the guy who's been in the system for a long time. He knows kind of what it takes to be the quarterback at Georgia. He came in and had a phenomenal showing in the Sugar Bowl game. I mean, to me, this is Gunner's job. And barring an injury or just absolutely, you know, taking this game and having a really bad training camp, which I highly doubt. This is Gunner's job, and I think for Puglisi, trying to push Gunner to elevate his play And then also trying to get the most reps he can. I mean, being a backup quarterback, I know from personal experience, you are one play away from being thrown into the mix and trying to take your team to new heights and new levels. So I think Kirby's always going to throw this competition narrative out there, and he really means it. He really does. He wants both of those guys to elevate each other. But I really think this is Gunner's job.
Yeah, but for someone like Ryan Puglisi, I mean, could a good G-Day performance even matter? Is it more so what happens in the scrimmages and spring practice that has a bigger impact on the outcome?
Yeah, I think it definitely matters. It'll matter of how kind of how quick the leash is, or it really kind of earns a lot of respect with your teammates. In my opinion, kind of when you go out in these games, these situations, these kind of unique opportunities, when you go out and play, and anytime you go out and play well, you earn respect from your teammates, from your coaches, and they'll be more inclined to trust you when your opportunity or when your number is called and when you get thrown into the mix. So it absolutely matters, especially for those two guys playing the quarterback position. Gunner wants to go out and play well and execute and do all the right things. And Puglisi wants to go out and put on a show and put some pressure on Gunner as well.
So in just a moment, we'll talk about some other position groups. First, of course, we have to give a shout out to Kroger. And when you work in sports, it's sometimes hard to remember like what time of the year it is. Time just flies by really fast. And I actually had the chance to go to Kroger yesterday, and I was quickly reminded that Easter is coming up because they had all the special candy out, whether it's like the Cadbury eggs or the really colorful M&Ms. It was a good reminder that Easter is coming up, and with that, you're going to need candy, you're going to need your hams, whatever you do for your feast. So you can do all of your fresh Easter finds at your local Kroger this year, from Easter feasting to basket building. Everyone will love fresh favorites from your local Kroger. So make sure to stop by your local Kroger or go to Kroger.com/Easter to find out more. So another one of the really exciting parts about this G-Day is the wide receiver group, because it was a little bit lackluster this year. So I think that everybody's just kind of ready for a fresh start. And whether it be the transfers that they brought in or some of the high school guys that they brought in, what's your intel on this new receiver group?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I want to see I actually want to see a vet who's been there kind of basically go out and kind of rebrand himself, and that's Dillon Bell. I want to see him go out and make a few splashy plays. I want to see a confident catcher, and I want to see a guy, just give me a little appetizer of what he could look like moving around and maybe playing different positions, throwing back there in the I formation, give him a toss sweep. I want to get a little appetizer. I just want to see a little something kind of what this guy can do with the ball in his hands. And I want to see the transfer wide receiver branch from USC. I want to see just kind of how flashy he is. Heard nothing but great things from him, and I cannot wait to see what he looks like on tape.
Yeah, from what we've heard this entire spring about Dillon Bell, he's been taking a lot of reps in spring practice, their running back position. So I'm curious to see like what glimpse we're going to get of Dillon Bell, of what he's been doing over the last couple of weeks. Now, when you look at G-Days past, a great G-Day performance doesn't always translate over to who's going to be the star for the rest of the season. But when you think back on your G-Days, was there anybody that had like a stellar performance that would ultimately foreshadow a really good season?
No, G-Day for me, like the first thing that comes to mind is my good buddy Ben Cleveland. And I really hope I don't get in trouble here for saying too much, but Ben loved to get primed and ready kind of for the party afterwards of G-Day, kind of even before G-Day, the game got started. So, I just Ben was always ready, and man, he was already having a good time kind of as G-Day the game was going, and he was already ready for that party afterwards. If you kind of get my drift a little bit there. So that was just kind of quick. One of the G-Day memories that quickly comes to mind for me.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. How much is the food, like the dinner y'all get after? Because isn't it the winner gets steak and then the loser gets something else? Like, how much is the food an actual motivator for the team? Because, I mean, for me, that would be everything.
I mean, to me, it's always a big motivating factor for me, especially for the big guys up front. I mean, we're talking steak, crab, lobster. I mean, all the fixins. Talked to Jimmy at Striplin's. Apparently, he's doing the food this year, and anytime Striplin's does it, I mean, it is just fantastic. So, winners get steak and all the goods and all the fixins. Losers get the beanie weenies. Yeah, it's just never kind of what you want. So you always want that top 5-star meal.
All right, so last thing is, you mentioned you want to see someone like Dillon Bell. You want to hear good things about the performance that he had after it was over. Is there any other one player that you hope we're hearing good things about after the scrimmage is over?
Yeah, I also want to see this new and improved Oscar Delp, and I want to see I want to see this intent and this focus that he's kind of been talking about over the spring. I want to see it translate, show up on film and on the field. So excited to kind of see big things from him. Obviously, still trying to fill this Brock Bowers void that this Georgia offense has been left, and how kind of he fits as a piece there in the offense.
All right, Jake, as always, thank you so much for your insight and your time. We're always appreciative of it.
Yeah, thank you, Kaylee.
All right, so that's going to begin to wrap up today's show here on DawgNation Daily, but it really wouldn't be DawgNation Daily if we didn't do a Gator Hater Updater. This is usually the part where Brandon says some really sarcastic comment, and I'm just not nearly as good at it as he is. So 1,616 days since the Gators have beaten the Dogs, and we expect that number to continue even this year. That is our Gator Hater Updater. Thank you all so much for joining us all week long, and we will see you right back here in the studio next Monday at 10 o'clock. And on video, time now for the R.S. Andrews Cool Down. R.S. Andrews, when you turn to for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. They show up on time and do the work that's promised for the price that's promised, and you can trust them on all of that. So we are going to take comments. I know we went long today, but I do have to say that yesterday there was a comment that I didn't see until after the show, and it is very rare that there is a comment out there that will actually make me laugh till I cry. So I want to give a huge shout out to Johnny Prescott on Facebook. If you watched yesterday, myself and Connor talked a little bit about the White Lotus, and he had said that Connor strikes him more as White Claw than White Lotus. And if you don't understand that, I'm sorry, but Johnny Prescott, I knew exactly what you meant by that, and Jay Black in the studio can back me up. I was in tears yesterday reading that comment. So before we get to the other comments, I just had to give you a shout out because I knew exactly what you were trying to say.
Kaylee, was that a cackle? Was that a belly laugh? Like, Brandon has his chortle. What does Kaylee have?
I mean, I don't know how to describe it. Like, I know I startled Jay because I'm sitting there doing work, and all of a sudden, like, I just erupted in laughter, and Jay had to turn around and see what was going on.
I'm trying to wear my headphones.
So
it was described as uncontrollable laughter, which led to tears.
Yeah, I was crying. So Johnny Prescott, I hope you're watching the show today, because that might be my favorite comment that I've read all year long. So before we start reading some comments, is there any other recruiting news that you wanted to touch on before we?
Oh, yeah, big news. 3-star safety Keelan Jones out of Sprayberry High School. Georgia's in his final group. He is going to make his announcement tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. His commitment announcement at 10:30 a.m. That will be prior to G-Day. So maybe the Dogs can start off G-Day with a new commitment in the fold. There's strong ties there to Jones and Georgia. They like him a lot. He's only a 3-star, but trust this, Dog Nation, when Georgia offers and prioritizes an in-state 3-star, especially at the defensive back position, I would trust Georgia's instincts there about taking an early commitment from a safety. He's about 6 feet, about 185, really smart, head on his shoulders. His recruiting has exploded. That will be one to watch tomorrow.
So there's a lot of people in the YouTube comments that are talking about Nico, the quarterback from Tennessee. Apparently there's contract negotiations going on. Do you have any better insight on what's going on in that situation? Is it purely a money thing?
Yeah, it's just tough, Kaylee, because what it is obviously the portal gives him leverage, right? And he can go to outside the SEC. So you can think he could go back to anywhere, like Pac-12, Big Ten country, wherever. But like, Kaylee, most of these deals, and this is the tough part, most of these deals are negotiated before the first portal period. So like I'm not saying this is exactly per se the Nico situation, but you lock down your guys, basically what you think is for the next season after the previous season, like in December. Well, the players sometimes look at that like, no, this is going to get me through spring practice, and you can renegotiate in April. Now, I want to tell you, the NFL would not last long if they would have to renegotiate their players twice in the middle of months, so, and not just a season, not just every 4 years, but in a matter of months.
And this is not the first time that Tennessee's had some sort of conflict with Nico, right?
Well, first of all, Kaylee, they kind of set the bar high for all these new negotiations with quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I mean, Nico was the guy that, reports, rumors, allegedly, he got like $8-9 million coming in for 3 to 4 seasons in Tennessee. So he was already very well paid. And then what is he trying to do? And then I'll be honest, if I'm negotiating on the behalf of, RockyTop.com or whatever, Nico probably hasn't shown a lot to be paid like some of those $4 and $5 million salaries that, even a guy like Carson Beck got last year from Georgia. Where's the All-SECs? Where's the big wins? Where's the coming up big against Georgia or coming up big against Ohio State? Like, the resume there is not strong enough for me. My simple opinion here, I don't think Nico is one of the top 10 returning quarterbacks in college football, but it sounds like he is negotiating to be compensated as such.
All right, so UGA Marine did comment on your kicks, which I would like to give a shout out to. Jeff's always bringing the shoe game. I don't know, can we see his shoes? Do you need to? Yeah, the customs, they're awesome. DT talking about our funky chairs. This is just what we have to work with. They are talking about what's on Jake Fromm's left shoulder. We were actually also having that discussion as the video was going on. What a stellar background. And I feel like it really captures the essence of who Jake is as a person.
It's funny, Kaylee. That's why I know I cover recruiting, right? Because I looked at him and I saw he had a deer mount, like he had a turkey picture, and he had his 2 Georgia jerseys. I was looking for like a Bills jersey or a Houston County jersey. Look at our crack production team right there. Going right back to it. One thing, and I guess I might be the first person to bring this to light, but Jake, I know one of 2 things. His son will either be a great football player or a hunter, possibly, potentially both. And I started doing the math in my head, and I don't know if Kirby Smart has offered Jake Fromm's young son a scholarship yet, but he's already trending. Georgia might be the clubhouse leader for the class of 2043. I believe that's right, 2043 for young Fromm. It already looks like he's a big strapping lad, athletic. Mama was an athlete at Georgia as well. Everyone know about Jake, but his mother played volleyball. Might even be 6'2", 6'3", a little bit taller than Jake. So I can't believe I'm saying that, but that's what goes through my mind, because there are stories out there, folks, of how sometimes when Herschel Walker's son or other players have children, that the university that they're attached to kind of honorarily submits an scholarship offer for that child immediately upon birth.
I mean, especially too, knowing his wife, former volleyball player, that's some good genetics right there.
Yeah, one of the things, Jake was never. Jake,
oh my goodness. When
we were discussing things that went during his recruiting, Jake was like, "Yeah, it'd be nice to be one of those 6'4", 6'5" quarterbacks." And so maybe his young son will have a chance to be that as well. I know one thing: he is going to come up around, understand competition, understand being in the outdoors, and understand having to have a good time.
So I'm on Facebook now. Johnny Prescott is here. He said that Connor feels like our adopted kid. We're going to find him Saturday and give him a few bucks to tide him over until he's able to get home and do his laundry.
Oh, man. Connor catching some strays here.
He always does.
Catching some strays here on DawgNation.
And upon inspection, zooming into the Zapruder film Jake Fromm photo, it appears to be ducks.
Ducks? Oh, okay.
He does love himself some duck hunting.
I can't say I've ever been duck hunting.
Like one of the things that, lots of athletes that like to hunt, these crazy things that come up, there's a profitable business in terms of making and creating duck holes. Like you buy the land, you bring in some dozers, you revamp the land, and you can turn like a $600,000, $700,000 investment into like $2 million pretty quickly. Because I've been told, I'm not a duck hunter, guys, but I've been told that God's country for duck hunting is basically Arkansas. And so if you can get a lot of outdoorsmen in the South, a spot somewhere in South Georgia, instead of them having to go to Arkansas, that would be delightful. But one thing about Jake, it's probably, is it just stereotypical now for the Georgia quarterback to be a hunter, outdoorsman? a guy that, loves either you're farming cattle or you're hunting deer, hunting ducks. We've seen that a lot.
I feel like some come into it already in that way, especially those who are from the state of Georgia. But DGD Outdoors, I'm sure you guys have seen them all over social media. Cade Brock, a fellow Roman. I went to school with my sister. I mean, I see where they take guys who have never done it before, and then they take them to do all that stuff, and then they end up loving it and keep coming back. Like, I know Jaden Rashad is no longer going to be with the program after this, but, watching his first time of them taking him, and I've seen Christian Miller out there before. Those videos are hilarious.
So it's funny. Shout out to Cade. He does a great job. That's a great brand. Gunner has rocked that gear for a lot of years, but did you see the one they did where Nate Frazier was with them? And Nate Frazier was climbing, I guess, up into a deer stand and climbing up into a tree. And the fans in the comments were like, Cade, be very careful. That's the rushing offense right there going through the grinder right there. And the people that run the account, I'm sure it was maybe Cade or one of his folks was like, listen, he was harnessed, he was under ropes, and it was just fine. Can you imagine Kirby Smart? Can you imagine Kirby Smart if he'd lost a player because he fell out of a tree stand?
Oh, their players would not be allowed to continue to do that after that. That would be the one example that he would make. I actually like this one. I don't know if you know this one. This comes from Bill on YouTube. Who makes the schedules for the teams, and who will they play, and how do they make them?
SEC office does it. It's kind of coordinated with a lot of things. Like they try to cook in long-standing traditional rivalries. But okay, Jay mentioned the Zapruder film, right? And so we're all friends here. This is cool down. We're just chilling, right?
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people. One of the most popular questions I've gotten, non-recruiting questions from Georgia folks in this offseason, is the continued love for the SEC office for Texas. I believe Georgia has to go play Mississippi State the week before Texas. Meanwhile, Texas has a bye week before they come play Georgia. And I think Texas has maybe Vanderbilt prior to the bye week, and then they have Georgia. So really, Diego Pava might pull off another Bama upset with Texas. Yeah. But they think that is, again, very fortuitous scheduling, how Texas gets the off week prior to coming to Athens.
Brent Clark on Facebook says, flag football is going to be an Olympic sport. I would love flag football games before and after G-Day, maybe one boys and one girls. On the Georgia team, who do you think would be the best flag football players, if you could pick three?
I'd put the big, tall guys, Noah Thomas. I would put maybe Elias Williams. Those guys would be unbeatable, go up there and get the ball. You want to try to get a guy that can really run and throw, which is hard to do, but sleeper pick might be Quintavious Johnson.
I'm so excited to see him on G-Day tomorrow. I really am.
Folks, you maybe not totally understand if you don't get all these stories that we pop out on these guys when they're recruits, but Quintavious was the quarterback for his high school team.
That's automatically what comes to mind.
Yeah.
It was probably the hottest game I've ever covered. I'm talking we put a thermometer on the track. It was 120 degrees. Miserable, and I knew that Q was a defensive lineman or being recruited as that, and they had him out there playing quarterback. He was the best quarterback we saw all weekend, and we had 4 games. So even when I see him now, I will always remember that day and his performance as a quarterback because it was just so impressive.
I believe he had 3 or 4 touchdowns in the game, some long rushing touchdowns. So normally you'd try to say okay, who played both ways? Ellis Robinson would be a great player in flag football. KJ Bolden would be another one. DeMello Jones would be another one. I think Chris Cole would be a great one. Funny little Chris Cole story. He told me at the Sugar Bowl was I asked him about the play against Texas, the one where he looked like he was an Avenger and he almost snares the ball. And I said, you think about that play? Did you think you could have got it? He said, man, I look at that play every day because I'm going to make those plays at Georgia, and I'm going to get those plays. And Chris Cole doesn't have to be anything like that, but Chris Cole, that is the way he's wired, and I think eventually he'll be a first rounder one day because he's got all the skills, all the tools, all the juice, and then he's wired that way too.
I love seeing Breda Pest Management in the comments on YouTube. Right now, I'm on DawgNation.com. A lot of nice comments about us filling in. We really do enjoy filling in for Brandon while he's gone. Garrison Tucker on DawgNation.com wants to know, outside of UGA football, what sports teams do you follow close, Jeff?
Ooh, interesting. I follow a lot of golf. It's funny, in the NFL, I follow a lot of players, not so much teams. I didn't grow up a Raiders fan, an Oakland Raiders fan, then an LA Raiders fan, now a Las Vegas Raiders fan, because my mom loved the Raiders, and she loved John Madden, and she loved Ken Stabler. So listen, when your mom is having you watch this team, that's going to help a lot in the way you were raised. Baseball's tough for me to watch, Kaylee, I'll admit. Baseball's really a social activity for me now, because, I grew up Braves. Like, for me, growing up, and there's lots of people that watch. I was having this discussion with somebody. When you're of a certain age in the state of Georgia, and I would say, like 48, 40, and down, you had to make two big choices as growing up. You had to be a Han Solo guy or a Luke Skywalker guy. I was a Han Solo guy.
I'm a Han Solo girl.
And you either had to be that or you had to be a Bob Horner guy or a Dale Murphy guy. I was a Dale Murphy guy. So I grew up loving the Braves, 13-0, the win streak, Coach Torre. Joe Torre actually has my same birthday, July 18th. But the point I'm making here is in the mid-90s when I saw it was a different game. And when everybody else is paying $400, $500 million or $200, $300 million, and the Braves aren't even touching that, that to me just screams unfair playing field or whatever. I think I noticed through the years when the Braves would have to replace like an Andres Galarraga or an all-star first baseman with a rookie, and you're like, how are they going to be able to keep up? That's one of the things with baseball that has really kind of soured for me. Like, obviously the Dodgers are great. I think the Braves should never have let Freddie Freeman go. I think they should have paid for him.
Kind of I don't want to say the beginning of the end, but definitely a lot changed at that point. I used to just be all dogs all the time. And then when college came and we were so close to the new Truist Park, we would go all the time. So I have got more invested in the Braves as of recently. I was going to be really, really invested this year, but now that they're 3-9,
hey, Strider, Acuna, Murphy, those guys come back, then they'll have more of a team. But I hate it how the Braves have become, hey, it's something cool to do in the summer. You go out the ballpark, you have some food, you socialize.
Just the whole experience with the Battery.
It's more the experience now than the team or the juice. I mean, it's kind of just the way Atlanta's built. And I guess as a long-suffering Falcons fan, I'm a really big fan of the Falcons when they wear the red helmet and the black jerseys. They just got to get it right sooner or later. Pick some dogs. It's not that hard.
All right, we're going to do our final comments, then we got to get out of here. This is Scott Gentry on Facebook. Who do you predict to be the biggest newsmaker on the team this year?
Good news?
That's what my mind goes. Are we talking good news or are we talking bad news? Let's just assume good news.
I think the cover dog for this year's team.
Don't say it.
I think I have to say it. It's probably going to be Gunner. It's got to be Gunner.
Oh, I thought you were going to go with Noah Thomas again.
No, because nobody really identifies with the receiver, especially. It's kind of hard because, like, Kaylee, who would you say was the cover dog for last year's team? Was it Jalen Walker? Probably.
Yeah.
Maybe Malachi, like the one everybody resonates with. But one of the things about the Georgia people is so interesting, and one of the things I do, especially G-Day in the first couple of home games, is I do a heat check. And like when the starting lineups are announced, I try to figure out who's the fan favorite. Because listen, you guys were there. You've been in the stadium for many, many years. Rodrigo Blankenship was the fan favorite out of everybody there. And maybe that's Brett Thorson, who's kind of that slow, low-key guy everybody likes. But I think there's just a aw shucks about Gunner that if he plays good to great football, I think people will really love. And I think that's something that I think so. And listen, everybody wants to talk about the quarterbacks and be about the quarterbacks. But, another thing, Kaylee, I got to say it. Everybody talks about a battle between Pugs and Gunner. You just want both of those guys to look great on Saturday because we saw last year Carson goes down and then Gunner has to come up. Like, this is a gauntlet of a season now, and I feel a lot of these transfer portal rumors are the Dogs going to get a quarterback out of the portal? Who can they get out of the portal coming out of spring practice? I think it's all fueled by you don't need to just have one guy. You need to have two guys. Like, look at last year at Texas. They lost Quinn Ewers for a significant amount of time, and they had to turn to Arch Manning for a few games. So I think now you want to make sure you got two capable hands under center and not just one.
Yeah, I do think that Gunner, because people are going to love the quarterback until they're not performing in the way that they want, and then they're going to find somebody else. So I think definitely at least to start the season, it'll be Gunner. If things continue to go well, he'll just end up being a fan favorite just because he is so likable. But that is really dependent upon how he plays, because everybody loved Carson Beck until they didn't.
Low-key pick here, and I know White Claw, White Lotus will probably get on my case for this, but just watch. Don't sleep on Peyton Woodring. He makes a couple of kicks, maybe to beat Bama, maybe to beat Texas, maybe to beat Ole Miss. All of a sudden, he becomes that dude, because I don't think it's been a while. It's been more than a minute, like the kids like to say, since he missed the kick, excluding an SEC championship kick.
All right, guys, that's going to wrap up today for DawgNation Daily. You'll make sure to go check out RS Andrews. Of course, the RS stands for Rapid Service. Whatever you need covered, they can come fix it that day. So check them out on rsandrews.com. So Brandon comes back tomorrow for the post-game show, and then you get them all next week for DawgNation Daily. But it is really cool that we get to fill in for him and give him that time with his family. I know that he's been wanting, and so I'm thankful that all of you still tune in to listen to myself, Jeff, and then yesterday with Connor. So hope you guys have a good weekend. We are so excited the football's back. Don't forget, pregame show tomorrow on whatever platform you're watching at 11 o'clock, and then the postgame show with Brandon Adams. You guys have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you right back here next Monday at 10 a.m.